Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. Today we have our NFL draft review, but before we get started on that, please subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy NFL content or Dallas Cowboys content, stay tuned. We got a lot more coming down the pipeline, but let's get into it. The NFL draft took place 2 weeks ago. Of course, 250. There were actually 255 picks this year, not 256, but we're going to run through the winners, the losers, some of our favorite picks. RJ, why don't you start us off with the winners that you saw or we saw in this draft?
So there were some teams that absolutely, I feel, knocked it out of the ballpark this year in draft, and there was a consensus among other people. And I feel like we're going to start off with the Ravens, who absolutely killed the draft, the Vikings, the Browns, who had great players fall to them, and especially high team needs, the Bengals, who doesn't win when you get the all-star quarterback Joe Burrow, and we talked about Dallas. Dallas was one of the key winners. We're not being biased here. We don't be biased here. We're not biased here on this channel, but that's just
If
facts.
you want to get our thoughts on the Cowboys draft, we have a whole draft review that you can watch. We get deep into it, but yes, Dallas I think was a winner. But let's start off with those Ravens. So in the first round, Patrick Queen at 28. We always had Kenneth Murray picked them, but I believe the Chargers jumped back into the first round, selected him before it got to the Ravens. But Patrick Queen was rated higher by me than Kenneth Murray because he's more of a three-down sideline-to-sideline linebacker. I think Murray's a little more limited athleticism-wise. Queen has it all. The Ravens, they were able to stick and pick, and they got a really good player that can immediately slot in for them and start. In the second round, J.K. Dobbins, I know it came out this week that their GM was like, we couldn't not pick him. He was graded as a first-round talent on our board.
Yeah.
Mark Ingram was already aging whenever he got to the team. They have a host of other running backs behind him, Kenneth Dixon, Gus Edwards, but none of them have really popped off. J.K. Dobbins could be your week one starter at running back.
Yeah, absolutely. He could, the way their style of offense, to get a guy that's was productive as J.K. was at Ohio State in the second round, not have to spend that money on a first-round running back. That was a great pick for them.
In the third, all the way at pick 71, man, I was marking this guy off for the Cowboys at 51. They got Justin Madubuike, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M. He's a three-tech monster, but he played all over the line for Texas A&M. There was supposedly some questions coming about him as far as his character around the draft. I didn't hear anything about that before, but apparently that's what possibly led to his slide. But man, that's a great pick for them, and he's going to fit right in onto that menacing defense that they seem to always field every year. Again, it looked like they had 4 third-round picks, and that's just a compliment to their front office, just acquiring picks on a team that's already stacked, and really taking advantage of the window that they have with Lamar Jackson. Devin Duvernay, the slot wide receiver from Texas, just speed, adding to the speed that they already have with Hollywood Brown that they took last year in the first round. Man,
I felt like they really needed to get wide receiver help, and even though they didn't do it at the beginning, which they pretty much picked the best player available and which fits their offense and their defense in the beginning, but I still feel like they were still able to get really great value at wide receiver with Prochet, one of my favorite receivers in this draft, in the 7th round, and Duvernay, who some people liked going to Dallas in the 3rd or 4th round and ended up going to the Ravens. I still feel like they need to acquire a top flight receiver somehow or some way, but if that's who they're going, I still feel comfortable with the draft picks there helping the receiver position out.
So they had 4 picks in between that 3rd rounder for Duvernay all the way into the 6th round, but I'm going to jump all the way to the 6th round because James Prochet, the wide receiver from SMU, man, I was hoping the Cowboys would take him, but I guess he just wasn't rated as highly as we had them, but that was the first time that they didn't pick a guy that I had marked on my my list. But Prochet to the Ravens, man, he catches everything. He plays a lot bigger than his body is. He's really a slot, but man, whenever he played outside for SMU, he would go up and get the ball. Not the best route runner, not the most athletic guy, which is why he went in the 6th round, but he has very, very sure hands, and you can't really ask for much more from a receiver you're taking that late in the draft. And then in the 7th, Geno Stone, the safety from Iowa. This was another guy that I hope maybe the Cowboys could get, and man, he fell all the way to the 7th. I thought he was more like a 4th round guy. That's just supreme value. And overall, man, if you look at the Ravens, they were already a top 5 roster, and they added you could say at least at a minimum 4 potential day one starters in this draft. And I mean, they killed it. It seems like they kill it every year.
Oh, we're gonna move on to the Minnesota Vikings, who they had 2 picks in round 1, pick in round 2, and then another pick in round 3, and 3 picks in round 4. And from the jump, I feel like in the first round they got 2 immediate starters and possibly 4 immediate starters with their first 4 picks. Starting off with Justin Jefferson, I'll let Sal dive into that one, considering he's an LSU fan.
Yeah, so Justin Jefferson, the thing with him is that he's going to be able to play outside. He played in the slot primarily for LSU, but if you watch him, I mean, he's running slot phase and he's just bodying up his defender, so he could definitely play on the outside. And he's a much different receiver than Adam Thielen is, a much different slot player. He's like a big slot if you want to play him there. And I don't think the Vikings ever saw him falling to them at 22. Everybody had the Eagles taking them right before. So they get Justin Jefferson, and then, like RJ said, their next first-round pick, they actually had 25, but they were able to trade back and still get the player that I had mocked to them. I don't know how many times in our mocks, but Jeff Gladney, the cornerback from TCU, he's going to fit perfectly in with Mike Zimmer's defense. And I'm going to jump to the 3rd round because they double-dipped at corner, and Cameron Dantzler, again, another perfect fit. And we were talking about receiver and corner being those huge needs that the Vikings had. Well, they completely revamped their secondary. They got a premier first-round talent and receiver. But then, man, just to put the cherry on top, protecting Kirk Cousins has been something that they needed to focus on, and somehow they were able to get Ezra Cleveland, who was rumored to be a potential first-round talent, all the way at 58. Whenever you get tackle talent in the 2nd round that far back, I mean, that might be one of the best values as we look down further on the road, looking back on these classes in this entire draft.
Because as far as offensive line goes, you really don't find a lot of like top tier, like you can start guys that are going to start or actually have good careers in the league outside of the 1st round, just for solely that position. And Ezra Cleveland was the guy that had the most, I think, starts out of all the left tackles at that position in the draft.
And at the combine, he performed very, very well, which raised his stock, but I guess not enough. But still, I mean, that's to the Vikings' favor. There's another tackle later on in this draft that I think is like almost equal value, but we'll get to that. Who's the next team on your list? The Jets?
No, the Browns. I have the Browns because though they stole one of our guys in the 2nd round, and I feel like in the 1st round, they had the best left tackle follow them, and that was their primary need. I feel like this coming into this offseason was protecting Baker's blind side and ensuring that offensive line, because he has all the talent around him, but obviously the offensive line wasn't good. We just signed Cameron Irving, who played for them a little bit, wasn't too great.
He was a first-round pick for them.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and things didn't pan out. But man, to get Jedrick Willis and have him fall to 10 was wonderful. And then in the 2nd round, somehow they were able to snag Delpit.
And I'm just thinking about their secondary. Like, okay, they already have a pretty good pass rush, right?
Yeah.
They got Vernon last year. He didn't perform very well, but they already have Myles Garrett. But then look at the investment that they've made over the years into their secondary. Denzel Ward was a first-round pick. Last year, they took Greedy Williams in the 2nd. Now in the 2nd, they get another LSU superstar in Delpit. I mean, that's building a defense for the future and building in your window, because, again, Baker is like Lamar in that window that they can be competitive. I know that they underperformed last year, but I think a lot of that had to do with the step back that Baker had. But being a first-round pick, the number 1 overall pick in his class, there's expectations that he will take the step forward beyond what he was in his rookie year. So hopefully that happens for them. But, yeah, I mean, Delpit in the 2nd, I had him marked off as one of my favorites in the 2nd. In the whole draft, just because I really do think he was a first-round talent. As far as playing the deep center field safety, there's nobody better than him. There was nobody better than him in this draft class. His instincts are crazy. The whole tackling thing, I mean, he's probably not the best tackler, but I feel like injuries played into that big time. We've gotten into that in the previous videos. So, I mean, that secondary is completely rebuilt over the years. I really like that pick by them.
We're gonna go on to the Bengals, because I feel like obviously Joe Burrow, you can't go wrong with that. But after that, I mean, they got Logan Wilson in the 3rd and T. Higgins to pair you. When you're drafting a quarterback, and as far as the question marks around AJ Green, and they have some good role-playing receivers with Tyler Boyd, and still trying to see what they can get out of Ross right now.
I think they just declined his 5th-year option, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a make-or-break year for John Ross.
Yeah, but pairing him with T. Higgins, which a lot of people, I feel like, they kind of like over evaluated him. Like, he was good at Clemson.
He produced.
Yeah, he produced.
Just, whenever you looked at his athleticism and the way he tested at the combine, he didn't fit the mold of historically what a great long-term receiver would be. He didn't test that. But production-wise, he put it all out there. And as far as jump ball receiver, there's maybe he might have been the best in this class.
Yeah, we all know Burrow was he was the best deep ball thrower in this class. And after that, they needed help at linebacker, and they got Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gather, who I think are just going to immediately start right off the bat. And
yeah, that's what I had here on my favorite picks. Logan Wilson in the 3rd, and then ADG or Akeem Davis-Gaither right in the 4th. So back-to-back, they needed help at linebacker. They have 2 guys that can immediately fill in. Davis-Gaither, he was rated a lot higher than the 4th. There was supposedly an issue with his knee that possibly caused him to fall, but in the 4th round, I'm willing to roll the dice on a guy. Maybe he doesn't have a 10-year career, but he has a 5-year career. Their window of 5 years with Burrow starts now. So it's all about investing in the present right now. The future is fine, but if you have a quarterback or you drafted a quarterback or somebody that you feel like you can believe in, you got to go now. And I feel like the Bengals did as good as they could, having I guess the minimum amount of picks you could have in the draft, which is 7, 1 per round. Who's the next team that you got listed here?
Well, as far as the next winners go, I have Dallas, but everybody knows about that. I mean, sometimes during the day, I just, doing something, and I'm just think like, wow, they really got CeeDee Lamb.
I really want to see it already. I don't know, man. I'm beyond the hype of the draft. I just want to see it already. Mm-hmm. I want to see how these things pan out for them. But man, they, like we said in our video, they hit every single need. Lamb at 17 was incredible. Now I just can't wait to see them hit the field.
Yeah, and we're more anxious than ever with a new offense and new staff coming in. Did you want to jump into any of the winners? That's kind of what I wanted to touch on. I was going to get into the losers next, but
before we get into the losers, I'm gonna just highlight a team that I thought was interesting, and that was the Carolina Panthers. Them drafting all defense with every single one of their picks. Starting off with Derek Brown, they got value in the 2nd with Yeturgros Matos, Jeremy Chin after that, Troy Pride Jr., Kenny Robinson in the 5th, which was the XFL safety that went to West Virginia, who played pretty good in the XFL. Bravion Roy, the defensive tackle from Baylor, and then finishing it off with Stanley Thomas Oliver III. He's a cornerback. But man, I mean, they needed a defensive revamp. Because last year they were dead last in stopping the run. Derek Brown can help with that. Gross Matos, Jeremy Chin is a freak athletically. Troy Pride, he was like a 2nd or 3rd round graded corner that they got value in the 4th. Whatever kind of defensive culture that Matt Rule wants to implement, I mean, he's got a whole draft class full of fresh faces that are going to be ready and willing to take in his system, and that's really what you heard about Matt Rule coming out of Temple originally and then Baylor, is that he had a culture, he had a system, and I think that's what drew the Panthers, David Tepper, to him. So in a draft class full of defense, he's going to be able to implement his defensive side. Offense, they already invested into Teddy Bridgewater. That was the route that they were going to go. And offensively, they were pretty good last year.
Yeah, and they picked up Robbie Anderson in the free agency, so that's a win right there.
To pair with DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, that's a good trio of receivers. Obviously, they paid Christian McCaffrey, so...
he wanted to address defense, and he did it with every single pick. And I feel like at least 4 or 5 of those guys are probably going to end up starting.
I won't call it one of the great classes, but definitely an interesting one, a positive one, I feel like. And it shows that they had a focus, and they let their new head coach and their front office take over. So now we can get into the losers. So who was your first loser, RJ?
First loser, Seattle. They drafted, again, I feel like when you have, I just saw a tweet earlier that said Seattle's going to have the better quarterback in 15 to 16 games, but they're only going to win 9 to 10 of them.
Yeah, and that seems like what it's been like for the past, 5 years or so, or maybe all of Russell Wilson's career. I think the thing that we talked about in our draft preview was or mentioning is that they never protect Russell. And again, in this class, I think they made a late investment, but nothing early.
They drafted the linebacker Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech, who people had all over their board. When Patrick Queen, who was still available at that time?
Patrick Queen was, I believe.
Yeah.
I think Seattle was at 27, right before the Ravens took Queen at 28. So,
which I mean, who knows? He could turn out to be great. But as far as if you go by the board, I mean, they didn't take the best linebacker available. The guy seemed more of a run stuffing linebacker. And you could have still drafted another receiver there. Just help Russell in whatever way possible. The second round they drafted an edge. And then finally in the third round, they drafted an interior offensive lineman, Damian Lewis, out of LSU. And I just feel like you could have gotten a lot better value there in the first round. And that's why I feel like, as far as helping Russ out, I don't care if this was their top need on the board. Like I say, if there's somebody there at receiver that could impact the team right away and help Russell out, that's the main thing. Just help Russell out. Then I feel like you should have taken that.
And Darryl Taylor, I'll give him a little bit credit. He didn't perform at the combine. Some people said that he could have tested really freaky, and with defensive ends, any kind of pass rusher, as if they test freakily, they have first round or higher buzz. So maybe they got a value there. We don't know. And then Jordan Brooks. They've been playing a lot of base defense, so he would fill in at linebacker. I mean, if that's what they're looking at and that's the future that they're going for, then okay. And he did have a little bit of first-round buzz. Maybe that was from the Seahawks, and they ended up taking him anyway. So, I don't know. I feel like they've always been way too reliant on Russell, and that's going to continue.
Yeah.
And not really maximizing on his talent. But who's the next loser?
The next one is, I think, which everybody had highlighted, is the Green Bay Packers. Now, I'm going to start off with saying I kind of don't mind the first-round pick because it's like you're not going to tell right now, and who knows, he could end up being like another great Green Bay Packer quarterback. But after that, selecting a running back out of Boston College who really wasn't in the top 200 on the board out of the majority of people, and then in the third round selecting a tight end when there's still plenty of receivers there that could add value to the offense. I feel like oh my gosh, what's the coach's name? LaFleur, right?
Yeah, Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, he I feel like it's picking scheme over talent, which you don't ever want to do, which I felt like they started doing here, and you don't ever want to get caught up in that. And I feel like that's what happened with Dallas as far as selecting need and scheme. And no, you always select talent over scheme. And it's just, I didn't like it.
Yeah, I don't mind Jordan Love because Aaron Rodgers has suffered some season-ending injuries in recent memory. But like RJ said, taking a big, powerful, bruising running back in the second whenever you already have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, how much is a third running back going to contribute to the offense? The tight end they took, DeGuara, supposedly they see him more as a fullback type. How much is that going to add to your offense? I mean, and they said they want to go towards more of a rushing attack. Okay, that's fine, but why would you want to hinder or take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hand if he is this transcendent, all-time great quarterback? I don't get it. They already had a great rushing attack last year. What they needed help was as a number 2 receiver because they rotated through MVS. Alan Lazard popped off a little bit at the end. Geronimo Allison disappeared. So they didn't really have that solid number 2 target to offer Aaron Rodgers. So they didn't address that. I don't know, man. We'll see. They do have a lot of returning starters, so if they believe they can just do a repeat again, that is very difficult for a team to do, especially in the case of the Packers, where they haven't been that consistent back-to-back years since the early 2010s. So, who's the next loser?
When McCarthy was coaching. The next loser is the Los Angeles Rams. And they took a running back with their first pick in the second round, again, because they didn't have a first-round pick. Cam Akers out of Florida State, which I don't know if this is McVay saying, I can really use this guy in this offense. But there was much more glaring needs, and I'll talk about that here. I did like the Van Jefferson pick because he is a guy that I feel is a lot like Cooper Kupp in a way, and a style of receiver that they do like. But if we remember and we recall correctly, the Rams, when you have a quarterback like Goff that when he's under duress, he's like he doesn't even know what to do with himself. And your offensive line was horrible, and you don't even take an offensive lineman until the 7th round. Who's going to block for him? Again, the same guys?
Like I was crossing my fingers for McCarthy, they're just crossing their fingers on Goff. Mm-hmm. They invested so much in him. They're hoping that he could take that leap, but man, he looks like a deer in the headlights. Mm-hmm. And we saw that in the Super Bowl that they played in 2 years ago, and we saw it happen throughout the season this year. Protection was key. They didn't take one. Cam Akers last year, they took Darrell Henderson, I believe, in the 2nd or 3rd round. Mm-hmm. I think it was the 3rd round. He could have been your starter. We've seen them whenever the year that they throttled the Cowboys, C.J. Henderson, they brought in as a free agent. Why couldn't you just do that again with the run game? A lot of their run is more about the blocking scheme, and again, that goes to the offensive line that they didn't invest in. So I don't know how much Cam Akers is going to see on the field. If Darrell Henderson ends up being a better back than him, I will give them a little bit credit. Van Jefferson was a good pick, but the pick that I like better in the 3rd round was Terrell Burgess, because they lost Nickel Roby-Coleman, and last year they took Taylor Rapp to play safety for them. So now they have Burgess and Rapp. Burgess can play safety for them opposite of Rapp, and he can slide down into nickel, which I talked about. I wish the Cowboys had took him, but they took Gallimore instead. So I'll give them credit there. But overall, they're still stuck with Goff, and we'll see what happens. But that's kind of what their ball and chain, that's what their future is kind of anchored to right now because of the contract they gave him. And I feel like they could have invested more in him if that's your long-term investment.
Yeah, and like I said, they didn't even take an offensive lineman until the 7th round when they had one of the worst graded offensive lines last year. And no.
Next on the losers list.
Who else did you have? I feel like those are the 3 biggest ones.
Yeah, I think I won't say the Redskins. The Redskins had an okay. I mean, obviously they got the best player in the draft, but they had some interesting picks down the road. Mm-hmm. I'll get into a couple of my favorite picks that we didn't hit on. The Redskins, actually, they took Sadiq Charles in the 4th round immediately after trading Trent Williams to the 49ers. Charles, he had 1st-round talent playing tackle, but man, he was suspended for a lot of games for LSU. Mm-hmm. It seems like they got him to play in all the big games, which was good for Tigers. They took the national championship this year. But Ron Rivera is that hard-nosed coach that can get at somebody in line, so I feel like they won in that pick. The Broncos, I like them. Yes. Judy Hamler and then Cushenberry in the 3rd. All 3 of those guys could be starting for them this year. And
that was one of my favorite drafts.
Again, I'm going to hit the point again, investing in the quarterback. If they believe in Drew Lock, then, man, they gave him everything he could ask for. They got Melvin Gordon in the offseason, so he's got all the tools in front of him. Now he's just got to start the Ferrari and just put the pedal to the metal, and hopefully he does it.
That's the blueprint right there for investing in your quarterback around you.
Josh Jones, the tackle from Houston to the Cardinals in the 3rd round, man, I thought he was going to go in the 1st round. He did have some developmental issues as far as his footwork and things, but man, he was a starter for Houston, I believe, all 4 years. Mm-hmm. I kind of knocked him a little bit because you can't go wrong with taking a player like Isaiah Simmons, but then again, when you have Kyler and the amount of under duress he was last year, but then they go ahead and lucking out and getting Josh out. Yeah, they definitely did. That's really what it was, and so that value in the 3rd round I thought was incredible. That was the other pick that I was tying to Ezra Cleveland, where you get a 1st-round type tackle talent in the 3rd. We'll see what happens with them, but they definitely have a need there, and they were able to address it all the way in the 3rd. Denzel Mims to the Jets in the 2nd. I'm going to start rattling off a couple of 2nd-round guys, but Mims to the Jets. Maybe it's not the perfect situation for the Jets, but as far as the Jets picking a player, they had a huge needed receiver. They were able to get another 1st-round talent guy all the way back in the 2nd round. And again, it helps Sam Darnold. He didn't have a true number 1 last year. Robbie Anderson is gone. Jamison Crowder can play the slot, but Mims is that big vertical threat that you can put on the outside. I really, really love that pick.
One of my favorite drafts was the Colts. I love Jonathan Taylor with their style, and Quentin Nelson, those big guys up front. I mean, he can be a guy that really produces in his 1st year, and that was one of my favorite picks. And then picking Michael Pittman Jr. also in the 2nd round. Those are two immediate starters, in my opinion, and that can really help out the offense and for Rivers.
Yeah, we're both on the same wavelength because that was those next two guys. That second round, that was my favorite second round of any team, and I said that in a previous video. I love the second round because I don't know what it is about. It always seems like there's more players. There's more better players than there are in the first round in the second round. So Pittman immediately goes on to the outside, and he's a completely different receiver than anything they got on the roster. Of course, T.Y. Hilton is in there, but he's a smaller speed guy. Pittman is going to be a vertical big guy to get up the field, and then Jonathan Taylor, like RJ said, I mean, that group of running backs, who was going to be your number one guy, I mean, is debatable, but Taylor could be your top guy, and he produced like hell at Wisconsin. If he had gone back, I mean, he would have broken every rushing record in college football history. So right now, they put all the weapons on the table for Rivers, and look, honestly, this could be a one-year thing, but whatever the quarterback of the future is that they possibly take in next year's draft, he's going to have a bunch of players in front of him to go out immediately and play with a good offensive line already set. So, man, Andrew Luck, come back. Right. I think that's what Colts fans are probably thinking, man, if we could get Andrew Luck to come out of retirement, that would be awesome, because it only took him retiring the year after for them to get all this influx of just talent on the team. But I think that pretty much covers all the thoughts that I had on this draft. It was very entertaining. I like the style. The only ESPN or whoever was controlling the telecast, you gotta quit with the sad and too in-depth shit, man. Like T. Higgins and his mom having a drug addiction for, like, come on, 16 years. Why did they have to say stuff like, I don't know. I thought that was just uncalled for and unnecessary in something that's supposed to be a celebration, and honestly, for a lot of people that tuned in, a break away from any kind of sad or depressing type news. But anyway, RJ, do you have anything else to add before we close it out?
Dan Orlowski is a loser.
Yeah, Dan Orlowski, man, that dude, big time shill. Whatever, man. Screw him.
He's a simp.
We appreciate you watching. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment on what you thought about your team's draft, or maybe some winners and losers that you had from the draft. We would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button right around this area. Stay tuned for the next video. See you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money.